Have a listen to this. Have a listen to this. Now, that kind of talk this week dragged Australia's share market to a two-year low. There are, of course, complex reasons for that.
He was the big spender. Right. The big spender.
Doing the grocery shopping could take a huge chunk out of the family budget.
And that's finance.
Hello and welcome to Comedian V Economist. We demystify the world of money and help you get a handle on the bigger picture. My name's Adam and we're joined as always by my little older brother and real-life economist, Thomas. Hi, Thomas.
Yeah, g'day, Adam. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well, thank you. Look, Thomas, big show coming up. Lots happening in the world of finance. Going to be asking you the question, Thomas. Has El Salvador collapsed after moving to Bitcoin? We'll find out how that went. What does it cost to build a whole new city and why would you? We'll cover that a bit later. Also going to ask you, Thomas, is there such a thing as carbon neutral fossil fuel? I don't believe that could be possible, but we'll find out. And Thomas, this is actually something that I wanted to ask Gladys Berejiklian, but unfortunately she's cancelled her press conferences and she's not even returning my calls. So she cancelled her press conferences on Sunday, said no more, that's it. And then held a press conference on Monday. So, but apparently it was a different one. I don't know. This is the worst. This is the worst farewell tour since Farnsey. Anyway, a lot of talk this week about vaccine passports and whether or not they're a good idea. Thomas, your thoughts on the vaccine passport?
Yeah, I mean, a lot seems to hinge on it, and there's a lot. Like in my community here, it's a big story blowing up because all the teachers are being forced to get vaccinated to keep their jobs. So that's become a very hot button topic. But I did see that I can score a fake vaccination certificate for $200. So I thought I wanted to ask you if am I getting ripped off or is that a good price?
Look, in short, yes, you're getting ripped off. It's a PDF, from what I understand, and there are plenty of PDF editors online. But I've been many things. I've had many jobs in the course of my life. I used to be a gate attendant for a tennis club in Darwin. I've flipped burgers at McDonald's. But among all those things, I've also spent time as an identity and access management specialist. So I've spent a bit of time looking into such things like identity verification, identity validation, that sort of stuff. So to answer your question, yeah, I mean, been a lot of talk. There's two things. There's one online group came out offering these $200 forged passports. Like, seems like a good deal, but if you actually looked into it and looked at how much effort there'd be in producing one, anyone with like a PDF editor of some kind would be able to knock one up pretty quick. I'd say it's a dud deal, but it's a bit like when, do you remember when the government turned off analog TV? They had a scheme where they gave contractors like, I don't know, something crazy like $300 to convert someone from analog to digital. And they just got snapped up. And it was literally just going and plugging in a set-top box and then walking away. And they just got consulting fees. So if you're too lazy to make your own vaccination certificate, or if you just can't be bothered finding out how, then maybe $200 is okay if that's for you.
Surely the health of the nation is not hinging on a bunch of PDFs.
Well, no, they did release an app, right?
Okay. Governments are good at apps.
They can do it. Anything where Stuart Roberts is involved is it's quality, it's top shelf. So they made an app, and the app kind of suffers from the same problem that the PDF does, to be honest. The app, they didn't build in any sort of what we call third-party validation. So it does actually pull your data down from a government website. It just doesn't do any checking to work out whether the data that it's getting and the site that it's connecting to is actually that of the government. So it just kind of makes a call out and assumes that whoever replies and responds to that call is the government. It doesn't kind of go, are you sure you're the government? Because this looks a lot like a kind of dodgy request.
Really? So that's how the people dodgy it up. They get on the other end of that call and go.
I think so. The guy who cracked it, I forget his name, Richard Nelson. He's the one where people have been sharing his tweet. So he took the Medicare Express app and showed how he could produce what appears to be a valid certificate that says, yes, I'm vaccinated. He said I'm not. He wasn't officially vaccinated. To his credit, he hasn't just spread here's how to crack the app.
Yeah, right.
He just said, look, this is how easy it is. It took me about 10 minutes. And it's all to do with validation. So there's nothing built into the app that checks to make sure that it's getting the data from the right place. The same problem with the PDF in a way. There's nothing, if you print it off or you show it to someone on your phone, there's nothing built into it that says this has come from a legitimate place. And so that's the big difference that with, say, the EU passports that they've got in. If you want to travel around in the EU, they've got a vaccine passport as well, but that's got a QR code on it. And that's like if you scan the QR code, that then takes you that pulls down the data live. It's cryptographically set up so that the data is validated, the source is validated. You can't falsify the QR code. But I think what it comes down to is there's a concept we talk about which is called level of assurance, right? And ultimately it comes down to how important is it to us as a society that the level of assurance is really high for this thing. So we could build something, right? The EU's proven it. They've got open source software. I don't know why we didn't use it. We're like, no, it's good. We'll make our own, thanks. And we failed miserably. But they could fix it, right? So they could fix it. But it comes down to the level of assurance that's required. So when we talk about level of assurance, we're essentially saying how important is it that the information that we're providing is valid. So if I go into, say, Boost Juice, right, and I say, I'd like a large Boost Juice, and they go, can I have a name for the order? I say, yes, it's Jesus. And then when they call out Jesus, I say, God bless you, and walk away with my juice, and everyone's happy. The level of assurance required in that environment is very low. It doesn't matter that I gave a fake name and I was wearing a funny dress. It doesn't matter at all, right? But if you go to something a little bit higher, maybe you're going to buy a ticket to the footy, you need to prove that the ticket is valid, so you scan the ticket on the way in. But again, there are people I know who buy children's tickets to the footy and then use like a PDF editor which says, this is an adult ticket now. So it's a valid ticket. The machine at the front is just checking, is it a valid ticket? The machine is not checking, does it belong to Adam, or does it belong to a child or anything like that? It's just saying, yeah, that's a valid ticket. You go through. There's no reason for the security to stop you and go, hey, something's dodgy here. So again, that's a slightly higher level of assurance. You're saying at least the ticket is valid. That's what's important in that scenario. So I think this is where we get to with the vaccine certificate or the vaccine passport. I don't know who's kind of enforcing it. It is kind of easy to forge, but not that easy. So, people aren't going to be hacking the app. Typically, they're not going to be paying $200 in most cases. So we're saying we're making it hard enough. We're creating this barrier.
I don't know, like up here, if that hack was easily available, it would spread like wildfire.
Right.
And I reckon half the population would have a fake certificate within a fortnight. I reckon, right?
Half
right
the
now.
population, really?
Yeah.
Well,
maybe
don't.
not. Maybe touch so. Well, like where I am happens to be the anti-vax capital of Australia. Like with children's vaccines, there's a very low vaccination rate, one of the lowest in the country, and high degree of skepticism. Ultimately,
though, who's enforcing it anyway? I mean, and you've got to remember, we need an environment that can accommodate people without smartphones, right? We can't have a smartphone is a mandatory thing. So it's
slippery slope, Adam. I think that's where we're going.
I mean, maybe that's why they want to put the 5G chip in us in the first place. I'm not sure. But it becomes easy to forge. You could still add a QR code to the bit of paper that then you could present maybe a driver's license along with it, someone validate. But who's going to do that? Like if there's like a 6'5" biker walking into a cafe, is the 15-year-old kid working in the cafe going to be like, I don't think your name's really Carol.
But what about so the teachers is a condition becoming a condition of employment that they're vaccinated? So presumably the school then needs to sign off or see something. Yeah. Well, what are they just checking a piece? They're not just checking a piece of paper and a printout, right? Is there some kind of central record for this thing, or?
Well, yeah, it's on the government register, and so they're going to have to fix it. But what I'm saying, I don't think it's a foolproof solution. But I think if we're trying to, if we think we could get it to be a foolproof solution, that's probably unrealistic as well. Well, maybe not unrealistic. There'd be a lot of investment.
Yeah, right. Like, are you saying that there's a technological barrier to something like a vaccine passport? Because that's where like a lot of people up here saying this has been the whole agenda all along. It's about introducing vaccine passports and then backfilling with all sorts of other vaccines as well.
No, I don't think there's a technological barrier to making it work. It could be made to work. It's working in the EU, right? The EU passport works. But you've also got federal police at the airport and airport security who are enforcing it. You're not relying on businesses to have people within the business kind of, enforcing it. I mean, it's a different story if you make it part of the employment, I reckon. You're going to go, well, we can check that in the same way that you have to provide your tax file number details. You could forge your tax file number if you wanted to, but eventually that's probably going to catch up with you. It sure did for me. The technological barrier isn't there. I guess the question is, how much effort do we go into? I noticed that the UK has just backflipped on it. They were going to do it as well. And then, what's his name? Boris Johnson. He's come out and gone, nah, we're taking this off the table. It's not worth the effort. And there are a lot of people, complaining that it infringes on people's rights. I know a lot of people that don't even, QR code check-in. They still fill out the form or just don't do it at all because that's their belief. I don't agree with it. I think we should be QR code checking in everywhere we go. But I think we should be getting vaccinated as well. I'm not looking to pay $200 for a dodgy PDF. So, yeah, people are always going to try and work around. I mean, this generation that's putting this forward is the same generation that literally faked IDs to go and buy alcohol at the bottle-o. So, we're no stranger to this. But no, I think the technical barrier could be overcome. That's fine. I do question how easy it is to enforce if we did go down that path. But is it the ticket to opening up? Like, is that from an economic standpoint? I guess they're saying it's a condition.
Yeah, they're still pushing. I mean, the barrier seems to come down every week. 2 or 3 weeks ago, we're talking about 80 to 85% of the population. Now it's 70%. In New South Wales, it's 70% of the adult population. Yeah. So it's like, it's not, it's barely...
Well, it was like with the vaccine waiting period between the first and second dose. Yeah. It initially started out like 12 weeks, and then if a fair way a bit into the pandemic or into the lockdowns, and it sounded like a lot. It sounded to me a lot like politicians decided that maybe it didn't need to wait that long. I know the health advice changed at any point.
It's a mess.
It's a mess. So I don't know. Lots to be unpicked. I think they could do a better job of the app, mind you. They could definitely fix the app, and it wouldn't be hard. Like it's there's not a lot of work that needs to be done to add that validation. But I think even if you do fix it, you're still relying on a 15-year-old cafe worker to enforce it. So
obviously, crypto is probably the solution here. It needs a blockchain solution, is what I'm hearing.
That's exactly right, Thomas. That's exactly what it needs. Well, speaking of blockchain, and El Salvador, the country, has gone live. They are now live with Bitcoin as their currency.
So yeah, they've made Bitcoin legal tender.
Legal tender. So they haven't replaced their currency, have they? They work in the US dollars.
They actually replaced their currency in 2001 and just went, we're just going to start using US dollars now. So they call dollarizing. They dollarized back in 2001. And have been using the US dollar since then. But now they've just made Bitcoin legal tender. So yeah, the government's rolled out a digital wallet. They called it Chivo, which is slang for cool. So like
Kivo, I think it might be.
Kivo, is it? Right. Yeah.
I have no idea. Kivo.
In this segment, we'll be mispronouncing a lot of Spanish words. But they've given every citizen $30 in Bitcoin for everyone who signs up. US dollars?
They gave everyone $30 in Bitcoin. Bitcoin tanked like 15% on the day they went live. It was like, so apparently they gave everyone $30 worth of Bitcoin in their Kivo wallet. Mm-hmm. And that was meant to be spent in stores using your Kivo wallet. But it wasn't too long before people worked out that they could just transfer it to another digital cryptocurrency and then just take it out in cash or into another digital wallet. So I don't think that you couldn't withdraw it from your Kivo wallet as cash. It was
no. Yeah, no, they've got a whole bunch of ATMs, a whole network of ATMs they've created where you can go and there's free conversion from Bitcoin into US dollars.
Yeah, but I think the initial $30 that they gave them somehow was you couldn't take it out at the ATM.
Okay, right.
So they just went, I'll move it to my other Bitcoin wallet and withdraw it as cash. But it was fine because by the time they withdrew, it was only worth $19 anyway. So how's it going? Do you know? Have you keeping an eye on it?
Not really, no. I'll be honest. I haven't followed it.
I'm glad we added this to the segment list. This is going really well so far.
Well, I mean, the interesting thing, so like they've set it up, it's become legal tender and they sort of want to create some move towards it. But sort of like a lot of the criticism in the press has been like, oh, these silly El Salvadorians trying to turn Bitcoin into a live currency when it's not stable, it's too volatile, you can't use it as a day-to-day store of value. And I think that's reasonably true, but it's not what the key problem that they were trying to solve. The key problem is that they have a huge remittance inflow. So there's like something like 20% of the population lives in America and they send $6 billion back home every year. $6 billion. So 23% of its GDP is coming back through these what they call remittances, people sending money back. And they pay a huge amount of fees on that, like through Western Union or the other characters. Apparently, the president, Nayib Bukele, probably mispronounced that horribly.
Nailed it. Yeah. Keep going.
Like a native. Yeah, apparently he reckons it costs them $400 million a year in commissions. And so with Bitcoin, obviously one of the key selling points is its zero fee transactions. Yeah, and so it's going to help people get money more easily and more cheaply and save some money. And 70% of the population gets some sort of remittance from overseas.
70%?
Apparently, that's what I read.
Yeah, wow, that's incredible. So, I mean, that's a lot of money then that someone like Western Union or who's the other one? MoneyGram?
Yeah,
that's a lot of money they're going to miss out on. They must be worried. Surely this is the tip of the iceberg for international transfers. Like whether other countries adopt cryptocurrencies as legal tender or not, once people work out they can transfer money around the world and pay next to nothing in fees, then doesn't that just pretty much wipe out Western Union's whole business model?
I reckon it does. I reckon that is the disruption that Bitcoin is providing, and it's sort of like it's like a lot of services now. Like one of the trends is demonetization. So there's a bunch of D's, so dematerialization. So we went from CDs to online music, so the product dematerialized, and then from there you go into demonetization, so then the product becomes free and it's like part of a subscription offer, or you don't actually pay for the thing anymore, there's some other way of extracting fees. So it's just demonetization coming for transfers, and Bitcoin's driving the way. But I think because the technology's there, it'll become, well, I don't know, there's still a lot of, like, so the World Bank and one of the things so Moody's downgraded El Salvador's creditworthiness and saying that it's opened them up because like know your customer regulations are now impossible. So that potentially lumps El Salvador into a bunch of rogue states like North Korea and Iran and things where the US government has sanctions on them because they don't trust that they're not funding terrorism and things like that, because they just don't know where the money's flowing. So.
But I think isn't the Kivo wallet, isn't that a government built thing? So I think that was one of the things about the Kivo wallet was it's built by the government. So even though the cryptocurrency, it's still like a centralized bank of sorts for Bitcoin.
Right.
I think. And that's one of the tools that stopped them kind of taking the money out as cash as soon as they were given it. They had to transfer it to another wallet first.
So they don't actually have the keys to their own Bitcoin. It's held by...
I don't know.
Right. We're out of our depth again.
I read it. Oh, so far out. I can see the shore. Oh, it's over there. What have we done?
Grab the lifeguard's attention.
Oh, where's an expert when you need one? But I think that was one of the criticisms, was that the Kivo wallet is like government owned, and because the president came out when it launched. President Bukele, or whatever his name is, he came out and there was issues with the rollout of the wallet, and he was like, yeah, it's bloody Apple and Google. Like, they haven't managed it well at all. I'm like, look, I don't know. I mean, I'm only going on the Australian government's management of COVID apps. But I don't know. I'm not sure that I would rate El Salvadorian government's app developers to scale out an app compared, like, any better than Apple and Google could manage. So we'll see. But tell you what, we'll promise you that we'll do a little bit more research on this perhaps and see if we can get some answers for you next week. Or better still, why don't you send us an email if you know more about this, cve@equitymates.com, or head over to the website equitymates.com/CVE, or tell us we're wrong on Instagram @CVE Podcast. You'll also find us on Facebook @CVE Podcast. Let's pause there. Go and do some research and be right back with more Comedian versus Economist after this. Welcome back here on Comedian versus Economist. And Thomas, what is this I'm hearing about carbon neutral fossil fuels?
Yeah, well, this is a pilot project that Ampol's launched recently. They're offering business customers carbon neutral petrol and diesel. But it's not actually in the petrol. They're doing it through offsets. So customers pay a bit extra more, and then they plant some trees and do some carbon offsetting projects.
Plant some trees in the hole in the ground they dug out to get the oil.
Yeah, it's a neat solution. But they're doing it on the full supply chain. So it's the production, consumption, the distribution, the full gamut. So yeah, and the way they're saying there's a market need because a lot of companies are committing to go carbon neutral, but they don't have, electric vehicles, or the sort of the infrastructure, particularly around transport's not there to support that transition. So there's sort of like this bridging solution where they can go carbon neutral by purchasing carbon neutral petrol and diesel.
They're also rolling out a lot of EV charging stations, aren't they?
Well, yeah, they're going hard. In May they launched the Decarbonisation Initiative, calling it, and there's a bunch of stuff in that. So they're moving into green hydrogen and batteries. They're investing $100 million in future energy projects to help achieve a goal to reach zero net operational emissions by 2040. $100 million is about 5 to 10% of their total investment, so on track. Committed to use 40% renewable energy by 2025 and 50% by 2030. Oh, and they've just rolled out. They just won a grant, and they're rolling out fast charging electric vehicle stations through their sites, 100 sites across the company's network. They've got a $7 million grant for that, which is about a third of the total cost. So
they can power them by using generators run on carbon neutral fuel.
Yeah, I think it's a sign of the times that you have essentially a fossil fuel company, a company built on, selling petrol, is leading the way, is seeing the writing on the wall, and they're trying to get ahead of the curve, and sort of pushing on with this stuff, and creating that bridging solution for companies that are ready to go carbon neutral, have sort of sold that to their investors and their customers, and but need to be able to deliver on it. So I feel like the space is moving quite quickly, and this is my sense, that it's moving relatively quickly, and it's being driven by business, and business is dragging the government along behind it.
It's very confusing though. So Ampol's a petrol company. They're now selling electricity. The electricity companies like AGL and Origin are now selling broadband. Because presumably there's no money in electricity. I don't know. Like, why? We're just going to end up with a world that everyone's selling everything, aren't we? Just companies are just going to struggle, just going to try and become big and sell everything.
No, it's the social website maximalism. Just everything becomes a social media network at some point.
Well, talking about building things and big things, Don't drink and podcast, kids. There's an economist, Thomas, right up your alley. An economist, Henry George, is talking about building a new city.
Well, no, he's not. You read that completely wrong. Yeah. No, this is billionaire Mark Law. He's an ex Walmart executive. He's got a vision for a $5 million new city. He wants to build a city somewhere in the desert. Effectively, it sounds like an eco city. Somewhere in the desert, he's pitching it. He wants to have the diversity of New York, the social services of Stockholm, and what was the other one? Cleanliness of Tokyo, that's right. So yeah, it's eco-friendly architecture, sustainable energy production, drought-resistant water systems, a 15-minute city design so people can get everywhere within 15 minutes, and fossil fuel-powered cars are going to be banned, apparently.
Wow. That sounds amazing. Sounds like
Nirvana or Nevada. They don't know yet, though.
Well played.
So at the moment it's a dream. He needs to raise, it'll have a population of 5 million. It's going to cost 400 billion, probably, at a minimum.
400 billion. Right. That seems reasonable, though. Like, that's not in today's money. To build a city that has 5 million people in it with all those things.
It's pretty cheap. You think, but that's kind of Sydney, right? Like, you just build another Sydney for 400 billion. Seems pretty reasonable.
Yeah, which begs the question, what's wrong with Sydney, COVID aside? But there's nothing wrong with the city itself.
Well, it's not a 15-minute city by any stretch. Doesn't have eco-friendly architecture. Has a lot of fossil-fueled cars rocking around the last time I looked.
I find that you reach a certain stage in life anyway where you just end up living in a 15-minute environment. Because I get on the train and go to work, which I don't really count that as transportation.
I think the town planners do.
Because I'm not doing anything. I'm just sitting there like listening to a podcast or reading a book. It doesn't really count.
Adelaide is a 15-minute city. You can get anywhere in Adelaide in 15 minutes.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is I don't really get beyond going to work. I don't really go out of my environment. I go down the surf club. My friends live around here. Kids go to school here, and I'm driving kids to sport and stuff all around the local area. So maybe that's just me. But I reckon maybe once you have kids, maybe that's just. Although then they're going to get older and they're going to have they're going to be playing sport in Nevada.
Yeah, who knows? So the interesting thing that I notice is that they're going to have a community endowment which will create shared ownership of the land. So it sounds a little bit like we have a structure here called a community land trust. So you can have something like an eco village or some kind of concept like that, where people own their individual dwellings or they rent dwellings from the community, but the land itself is always owned by the community and is never sold off. So you don't have this sort of freehold title kind of concept.
Right, you own the house but not the land.
Yeah. And that's where this American economist Henry George comes in, because around the turn of the 20th century, he was quite famous, and he's essentially saying that everything comes back to land. All economic value is derived from the land, or has its roots in the land, and we don't want to be privatizing that because the land is a communal asset. It's owned by the Commonwealth, by whatever it is, by the collective, and we shouldn't be letting individuals run off and do whatever they want with it. We should keep hold of it. One of the ideas, and the sort of interim step of that is he suggested replacing all taxation with land taxation.
So you just pay a tax to have some land, but you never own it, and then they use that tax to pay for all the things. So there's no other tax. There's no other income tax. There's no.
I think in an ultimate vision of that. The interesting twist here is that monopoly was built around George's principles. So it was trying to, right. The woman who came up with it, I forget her name now, but she was trying to demonstrate how the ownership of land ultimately creates monopolies and entrenches power. And you need to sort of deconstruct monopolies. You need to get into land and democratize land. And the Monopoly, the board game, was a teaching tool to demonstrate that principle.
It's just a big capitalist tool, though, isn't it? Like, you've got to crush everyone else in monopoly.
Well, no, that's the point. Yeah,
it doesn't sound very social at all. You've got the whole point of monopoly is to just smash everyone else and drive everyone else bankrupt.
Yeah, that's the capitalist game, right? Well, that was her point. That was her point. Like saying that the way the rules of monopoly are set up, which is the way the rules of the economy are set up, is that's what happens. It just naturally creates monopolies. You need to actively intervene to stop monopolies and entrench power accumulating in smaller and smaller number of hands. You need to actively engage to stop that happening. Otherwise, the rules themselves will just naturally create those kind of outcomes. And monopoly was a sort of like a teaching tool to say, look, go everyone do it. See now there's one person with all the power and all the money.
And he's building a new city over in Nevada. Don't forget your roots, Henry. No, Mark. The thing that worried me, though, is he said that it would allow residents to participate in the decision-making and budgeting process of the city. Is this guy for real? Has he read Facebook lately? He logged onto Reddit. The city will be full of 500 GameStop stores.
Yeah, but I mean, that's democracy, right? Like that's... To participate in decision making and budgeting, like that's the democratic process.
You lost me at budgeting. I don't want to be involved. Let's get some accountants in, pay them to do the budgeting. Oh gosh, I think we've nearly made it to the end, Thomas. I don't know how we've done it tonight, but before I go, we did have some listener email coming that I wanted to run this one past you. Rob wrote to us, sent us an email, as you can too, cve@equitymates.com. Just wondering if you guys would consider talking about this property developer, China Evergrande, and its broader impact on the Chinese global housing market, Chinese/global. Thomas.
Yeah. I did mean to do some research into this. Yeah.
Great. Here we are again.
Yes, as
finish strong, big finish.
Yes, as I understand it, Evergrande build houses. No, so people are talking about Evergrande. I don't even know if that's how you pronounce it. It might be Evergrande. I've got no idea. Being the Lehman Brothers, the Chinese Lehman Brothers. So they're pretty much going bankrupt, it seems. So they are China's biggest developer. They build the most units in China. They're very big. They have things everywhere, arms everywhere, but they're going bankrupt and at the point of collapse. And yeah, their bonds are selling at like 25 cents to the dollar or something. I think even lower than that. Yeah, and so there's sort of people they're trying to fire sale all their assets and trying to pull something out of the hat to stop from going under.
Right.
But they have debts to their suppliers. They have all these contracts with people who've paid deposits for houses. They have finance arrangements with banks. So if they go under, there's a potential for what they call contagion, that it's going to bring a lot of other people down with them. Creates a bit of a Titanic-like sinkhole that then sucks in everything after it. And you're already starting to see that with the other developers in China, that now sort of the bond markets and the banks are going sour on the whole sector, like saying, well, if Evergrande can go under, how steady are the rest of these characters? And so and for the moment, the Chinese government seems a bit happy to let the shakeout continue, and don't seem to be actively stepping in to bail out Evergrande or bail out their creditors. They're kind of happy, and because it's part of the reason that Evergrande got into trouble was that China was trying to rein in credit growth, and Evergrande ended up on the wrong side of that. Yeah, so there doesn't seem to be any government support coming. So, yeah, the whole sector looks a bit wobbly. And then that has implications. One of them is that there's rumors that Tether, like the USDT in crypto land, or some of the assets, which no one's really sure where their assets are, but something they might own a lot of commercial paper from Evergrande. So that might sort of put pressure on Tether. Yeah, right. And the Chinese construction industry accounts for like 60% of all seaborne iron ore trade. So it's like it could be a massive hit to iron ore demand. Iron ore prices are actually tanking right now on the back of this and amongst other things.
Right.
Yeah, so it has the potential to be, as some people are saying, the next Lehman Brothers. And this could be kind of the trigger for another global financial crisis of some sort. That's it. I mean, and I don't want to sound too alarmist because there is always something like that around. You can, like, at any point in time, you can always point to something and go like, oh, if that keeps going really bad and gets worse, that could bring down the whole global financial system. There's always something like that. So most people think it'll be a bumpy but softish landing. The Chinese government will kind of step in to limit the contagion somewhat. But it's a risk and it's a big unknown.
So load up on crypto.
Well, not USDT, not Tether in that case.
No, I'll diversify, obviously. Get some Solana, a bit of Phantom.
Yeah, get out of USDT, I think is the...
Very good. All right, we should wrap it up there. Thank you for staying with us through that episode. It was a bumpy ride. We really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to tune in. If you'd like more mispronunciations and ill-informed commentary, then please... Please check back in with us again next week. We promise that we will do some much better research for next week. How about in the meantime, though, why don't you check out some of the other great podcasts from Equity Mates Media? Get Started Investing, Equity Mates Investing Podcast, You're in Good Company. And if you haven't checked it out yet, there's a new podcast from Equity Mates Media called Talk Money to Me. And it's really good. I had to listen to their episode, their AutoPad episode the other day, and there's some really sweet buy recommendations and some good, some actual research involved in those buy recommendations. So if you're into that sort of thing, then make sure you give that a listen. Thanks once again for tuning in. We really do appreciate it. And we'll talk to you next time on Comedian versus Economist.
Comedian vs. Economist is a product of Equity Mates Media. All information in this podcast is for education and entertainment purposes only. It is not intended as a substitute for professional finance, legal, or tax advice. The hosts of Comedian vs. Economist are not financial professionals and are not aware of your personal financial circumstances. Before making any financial decisions, you should read the product disclosure statement and, if necessary, consult a licensed financial professional. Do not take financial advice from a podcast. For more information, head to the disclaimer page on the Equity Mates website where you can find ASIC resources and find a registered financial professional near you. In the spirit of reconciliation, Equity Mates Media and the hosts of Comedian vs. Economist acknowledge the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respects to their elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people today.